watching the Andover Welcome Channel, made possible with major funding from the Andover Convention and Visitors Bureau, in partnership with the City of Andover and these local organizations.
Hello and welcome to Andover. It's such a great place to live, work, and play. Take a few minutes and see why.
Andover, Kansas is home to me and to about 12,000 people who help make this a terrific place to live and visit. We've been nationally recognized for our quality of life. Drive around town and enjoy the view of a vibrant, growing community. There are lots of great neighborhoods. We have a reputation for having some of the nicest housing developments in the area, including some that border golf courses. At the same time, there are cozy condos for senior living and a variety of choices for apartment dwellers. An unusual feature of Andover is that our city government is centered in a park, Central Park. In the 1990s, this was a Girl Scout camp named Camp Seekawak, which is cookies spelled backwards. As the population grew, the Girl Scouts wanted to move, and the city and the school district had the opportunity to buy the land. Central Park is now home to City Hall, where you can come to Andover City Council meetings, obtain city licenses and permits, and sign up for recreation programs. You can also arrange to rent city buildings, two of which are in Central Park. Did you know that if you bring a group to stay in Andover hotels, you could qualify for free building rental? Just book a total of 10 room nights at one of our 2 local hotels, and your family event or corporate meeting can enjoy the lodge, the conference cabin, or the Andover Community Center rent-free. Andover Public Library is in Central Park as well. This is one of our greatest community assets, bringing people here from all over the area. The library is famous for its children's programming, including story times for ages infant on up, summer camps, and activities for teenagers. You can even find unusual cake pans there. Check it all out at the Andover Public Library. The other main center of governmental activity is in the 900 block of North Andover Road. Here you'll find the police department, municipal court, and the headquarters of our fire and rescue department. Next door is our original library, now home to the Andover Historical Museum. Come discover the history of Andover. The museum has some fascinating artifacts, including the original town pump. Andover was first known as Cloud City when it was founded in 1880. Later that year, Mr. Cloud had a falling out with the locals, and we were renamed Andover after Andover, Massachusetts. The museum also details one of our most famous events, the train robbery of 1898.
Mr. Chairperson, it's up to you if you'd like to call the meeting. We can go ahead and get started.
Yes, let's. I appreciate that. I'll call to order the City of Andover Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. So thank you everyone for being with us. And we will try and be as expedient and efficient as possible. Let's do a quick roll call. I'm Eric Peterson.
Gary Israel.
Marla Canfield.
Vance Garwood.
Thank you. All right, let's jump to item number 3 on the agenda, the minutes. Specifically the minutes of the March 16th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting that we had. So if there's any questions, bring them up. If there's not, I'll look for a motion to approve those.
Mr. Chairman, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals for March 16th, 2021.
Thank you, Gary. Motion by Gary. Do we have a second? Motion by Kirsten. She hopped into the meeting and seconded simultaneously. That's impressive. So motion by Gary, second by Kirsten. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carried. All right, thank you. Item number 4, communications. Les, staff, anything on the committee staff report or the residential development?
I don't think we have any comments this month. We're just moving along at a steady pace.
She's cutting in and out. It's cutting in and out.
Thank you, Les. Lance, or if somebody could maybe monitor that and mute unless it's me, then just tell me to be quiet. All right, let's move on to the meat of the agenda. Item number 5.1, the preliminary plat of the Hodges 7th subdivision located at 309 West Turnpike Road, generally at the northwest corner of North Main Street and the Kansas Turnpike. Staff, Les, any comments to lead us off?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one, Mr. Chairperson.
Right.
The applicant is proposing 7 duplex dwelling units on 1.6 acres of property. Some of you who were on the Planning Commission late last year may remember that the property was rezoned from SF1 single family to MF2, which is our multifamily zoning district. That was back in late December of last year. We went through a couple rounds of review with the applicant, and the subdivision committee received and recommended approval of the preliminary plat at their meeting last week on April 13th. They did have some conditions. One of those conditions was that the applicant seek a variance on the 25-foot front setback requirement. You'll notice that at the top of your screen there that Lance is pointing out. The requirement's 25 feet. That's technically the front. The applicant has requested a 15-foot setback. So that's where the variance comes in. We did receive that variance application yesterday, and you should be reviewing that variance application at your May 18th BZA meeting next month. Another stipulation was that the applicant provide staff with confirmation from Evergy regarding 15-foot easements on the property. Typically will require a 20-foot utility easement. But the applicant has requested 15 feet. The applicant has provided correspondence with Evergy regarding that 15-foot utility easement. So Evergy is happy with that. And then finally, we had a couple of outstanding engineering comments from our city engineer, and our city engineer has worked with Boffman Company, the applicant, on those and no longer has any engineering concerns. So all 3 stipulations from the subdivision committee meeting last week have been met. I don't think there's any additional staff comments on this particular preliminary plat. I believe the applicant, Phil Meyer from Boffman, is in attendance if you have any questions. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any? First, Phil, are you on with us, Phil?
Yes, sir, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to have you with us. Maybe before questions, we'll see if you have anything you want to add to what Justin said, Phil.
No, I think Justin covered everything. Our one item that still needs to probably be resolved is the 25-foot front yard setback versus the 15, which which we can't do till we get to the final plat and you guys have a chance to do the BZA first. And then we'll continue to work with your city engineer as we go into the final plat if there's any issues he needs as we proceed with drainage and utility plans.
Great, thank you very much. Well, does any of the commission have any questions for either Justin or Phil? All right. Hearing none then, unless we have any further discussion, I will entertain a motion for approve with modifications, or to disapprove the Hodges 7th subdivision plat, or preliminary plat, forgive me.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question for Justin.
Sure.
If we do this evening, we approve this, do we need to include as a modification the variance? You know, this is just the preliminary plat. They'd have to get that variance before the final plat. So do we need to include that as a modification?
Yeah, I think you can, Gary. I think you can go ahead and include that in there. Just knowing that the variance is forthcoming, I don't think it'll hold us up any by having it recorded in the minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Then, Mr. Chairman, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve with modifications the Hodges 7th subdivision preliminary plat. The modification being that the variance on the setback from 25 feet to 15 feet is approved in the May meeting.
Gary, thank you for that motion. Do I have a second to that?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thanks, Vance. Motion by Gary, second by Vance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carried on 5.1. We'll now move on to agenda item 5.2, which is the preliminary plat. Let me get my paperwork right here. Here we go. The preliminary plat of the Speyside at Teradyne Estates, generally located at the southeast corner of 159th and the Turnpike. Staff, Les, want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one too, Mr. Chairperson. So the applicant is proposing 28 individual lots on 8.52 acres. The property is zoned single family 2, which is attached single family residential. Again, similar to the last item, these were both submitted at the same time. We had a few rounds of review, and similar to the previous agenda item, there was some discussion regarding the utility easements, the 15-foot and the 20-foot versus the 20-foot requirement. Thomas Joyce, who's with us with Boffman, was kind enough to send over a revised plan. Part of the stipulation of the Evergy's agreeing to the 15-foot versus the 20-foot utility easement was the addition of a 10-foot utility easement on lot 15, block A. So there's just a little easement that they request be added there. The only other comment that we had was we did have a few outstanding engineering comments regarding drainage. And our city engineer, Josh Golka, was in communication or attempted communication with the applicant regarding a few of those outstanding comments. And I think they weren't able to get together, unfortunately. But basically, as it stands right now, the staff is comfortable with the preliminary plat, but the accompanying drainage concept plan, there's just a few outstanding questions there, but nothing that should severely hamper approval this evening. So I'm open to any questions that you may have regarding this one.
Thank you, Justin.
So, Justin, you think that things will be resolved before the final plat comes forward?
I think it should. Yeah. I just think there's a little bit of phone tag going on today regarding those items. I don't anticipate it being anything major that will stall the project or anything like that. Like you said, Gary, I think in between now and the final plat, I think it should be resolved.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Bill, anything you want to piggyback on that, on what Justin said or Gary's question?
No, I guess a couple things I'd point out.
Okay.
Probably the only item on the staff report that we would like to not do is item number 2, where staff asked us to consider an access easement between lots 20 and 21 Block A to get to the putting green. I did talk to the developer about this. The developer of this is the same individual that owns the golf course. They would prefer not to do an access easement between 20 and 21, but they have access at the end of the cul-de-sac on the northeast corner. They also will have access on the south line of the plat, and then the existing golf course circulation system to access the green. So that's the only item. And again, staff didn't tell us. They asked us to consider it. So I don't know if it needs to be in your motion or not. Then past that, we will continue to work with your engineer. I have no concerns about the drainage plan being approved with the final plat. We have got approval from KTA for part of the drainage that goes on to them. And I've got no concerns, and we'll continue to work with your city engineer. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
So, hey, Lance, or whoever's running the screen, can you do me a favor? Bring back up that spot where Phil was talking, where he said we'd prefer not to do this. I was just trying to understand what he was saying, and I got lost. So just explain that to me again, if you would, Phil. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So helps if I unmute. So staff was asking us to consider doing a pedestrian access easement over that 10-foot utility easement, so residents in this development could walk between those two houses to get to the putting green. Our developer would prefer their access be other means through the golf course. The one our cul-de-sac touches the golf course at the north end. They can access that way right there. And at the south end of the plat, we also have a cart path system through the reserve there. So they have 2 ways to get to that putting green if they wish to use it.
And just to clarify too, that staff comment, we did send that out. And we do typically include staff comments and markups and things of that nature in the subdivision committee packet. If there's a lot of unresolved issues, we will attach those comments in the planning commission packet as well. But because the majority of our comments were addressed, you won't be able to find that comment in the packet. So if you are looking for that, it's not there. I just wanted to go ahead and clarify that.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. I was going off of what I was reading, Justin.
No, it's definitely good information, Phil. Thank you. I just wanted to go ahead and update the planning commissioners to say, yeah, we definitely had that conversation.
So, procedural question, the motion from us need to include that or not need to include that?
It doesn't necessarily need to include it, Eric. It's up to you guys. If you think that that's something that is of value, you can certainly discuss that. But any motion for approval of the preliminary plat, I would recommend that you include any outstanding engineering comments be addressed. But I don't think that there's necessarily a need to address that specific comment unless you would like to.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the clarification. So does anyone have any questions for Justin or Phil?
I would make one comment, Mr. Chairperson. You know, the developer does have 2 accesses to that putting green from that new development. Yeah, third would be nice, and simplistic for everybody, but you want to give a little privacy to the people in lot 20 and 21. So I don't think it needs to be included.
Thank you, Gary.
Mr. Chair, this is Vance. I tend to agree as well. We talked about this in the committee last week as well. And sure seems to me like there's enough access there that extra traffic going through the putting green may not be desirable. So I completely understand. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that from both of you too. Any other comments? And if not, then we'll look for a motion on this.
Mr. Chairperson, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve with modifications the Speyside at Teradyne East Estates preliminary plat. Those conditions being that drainage gets worked out before it's brought up for the final plat.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Thank you, Gary, for that motion. Do we have a second?
I, Marla Canfield, will second the motion.
Thank you, Marla. Have a motion by Gary, a second by Marla. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to recess the Planning Commission and convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Vance Garwood make a motion to recess the Planning Commission and convene the Board of Zoning and Appeals.
Thanks, Vance. A second?
Kirsten Barnes, second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are now into the Board of Zoning Appeals. So agenda item 5.3 is the which is a public hearing on case number BZAV-2021-03, which is a variance at 844 South Daisy Lane. We would like to, let me get my paperwork right. Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions to be attached to the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to comply with the standards set out in Article 11.106. These are to reduce any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a variance shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
Hearing none, we'll continue. Official notice for this hearing was published in the Butler County Times Gazette on March 27th, 2021, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 12 real property owners of record in the area of notification on March 22nd, 2021. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
No.
Thank you. I now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Chairman, this seems to be a very typical request for this neighborhood. You can see on the exhibit that these are platted 1 acre lots, and in this case, the applicant actually owns 2 of those 1 acre lots. You'll also see that there are several large accessory structures in the area. The lot area supports those large structures. The percentage of lot coverage is about 20% of what's allowed, and the proposed location provides for adequate separation from any adjacent properties.
Thank you, Les. I now call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to the zoning administrator's report. Is the applicant with us?
Yes, sir.
Welcome. Would you please state your name and address?
Sure. This is Corey Bevan, 844 South Daisy Lane.
Please share with us your thoughts on this, if you would.
Les covered the majority of it. Yes, I'm looking to put up a second or a detached garage for storage of vehicles and lawnmowers, essential items that don't want to be left outside. The structure would be 2-car, 24-foot wide by 36 feet deep, with 2 garage doors at the front, attached to an existing driveway that has footings and stuff present for a building that was never erected on it, and wish to just use that existing framework. Happy to answer any questions that anybody might have pertaining to the structure.
Yeah, I do have a question. This is Eric Peterson. What's the exterior of the structure going to look like? Is it going to fit with the surrounding, visuals?
Absolutely. Great question. Yes, I intended to, it'll be a stick or framed garage, and the exterior will match the existing accessory structure that is on the property currently.
Height pretty similar too?
The height will actually be shorter. The house that's on it is 10-foot walls. My intent for the garage will be 9 feet at this point.
Thanks.
So the roof line will be at or below the residential structure.
And you said that existing driveway is already there. You're just using it, right?
Correct. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Any other members of the commission have questions for Corey?
No, he answered the questions I had. I appreciate that.
Corey, appreciate it. Appreciate you taking time this evening. So to the commissioners, have any written communication, or I'm sorry, this is to staff, forgive me. Have any written communications been received?
No, sir.
Justin or Lance, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Corey, any final comments you need to present?
I have none. No, sir.
Thank you. Hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation. I'll be happy to read it the first time through, assuming I can find it. There we go. Okay. Does the evidence demonstrate that the physical surroundings, shape, or topography of the property would result in a practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience for the owner, lessee, or occupant? Staff. The subject property is 1.91 acres, which provides a substantial area for accessory structures while remaining below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage limit of 30%. Additionally, the large lot size allows for adequate separation from existing and proposed structures to adjoining properties and public streets. No additional traffic is expected as the intended use is personal storage.
Concur.
Number 2, granting the variance will result in material detriment or injury to other property or improvements in the neighborhood. Staff, no detriment and or injury to other property or improvements is anticipated.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 3, granting the variance will result in an inadequate supply of light or air to adjacent property, substantially increased traffic congestion, increased fire risk, or substantially diminished property values in the neighborhood. Staff, the subject property is 1.91 acres, which provides a substantial area for accessory structures while remaining below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage limit of 30%. Additionally, the large lot size allows for adequate separation from existing and proposed structures to adjoining properties and public streets. No additional traffic is expected. Intended use is personal storage.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 4, the request for a variance is not based exclusively on a desire of the owner, lessee, occupant, or applicant to make more money out of the property. Staff, the applicant has declared the intended use to be personal storage as an accessory residential.
Concur.
Concur.
Specific condition. Number 1, the requested variance arises from a condition unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, which was not created by any action of the property owner or the applicant. Staff, the minimum lot size for the SF1 single-family residential low-density district is 20,000 square feet. The subject property is substantially larger at 83,100 square feet, which provides substantial area for accessory structures while not affecting property owners.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 2, strict application of the provisions of these zoning regulations would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, or occupant of the land or structures. Staff, the intent of lot coverage is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of residents. The subject property is 1.91 acres, which provides a substantial area for accessory structures while remaining below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 3, granting the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Staff, the minimum lot size for the SF1 single-family residential low-density district is 20,000 square feet. The subject property is substantially larger at 83,100 square feet, which provides substantial area for accessory structures while not affecting adjacent property owners.
Concur.
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 The requested variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff. The subject property is 1.91, which provides a substantial area for accessory structures while remaining below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%. Additionally, the large lot size allows for adequate separation from existing and proposed structures to adjoining properties and public streets. Number 5, the requested variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these zoning regulations. Staff, the intent of lot coverage maximum is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of residents. The subject property is 1.91 acres, which provides a substantial area for accessory structures while remaining below the zoning district's maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%. The large lot will allow for all required setbacks to be adhered to. All right, that all being said, is there a motion to either approve, modify, and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
I, Vance Garwood, having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have been found that support all 5 conditions set out in subsection 11-106.b2 of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E, I move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the variance for BZA B 202103.
Thank you, Vance. Have a motion made by Vance. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Motion by Vance, second by Gary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. A resolution will be prepared and made available to the applicant as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than May 4th, 2021. If anyone is aggrieved by this decision, a further appeal can be made to the district court to determine its reasonableness within 30 days after the resolution is signed and filed with the zoning administrator. Thank you. Corey, thanks for with us tonight.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next item.
Sorry, I think I accidentally demoted your chairperson. Sorry, Eric. You're back up.
Eric, I think you're on mute now.
I don't think that was an accident, Gary. I think he intended that to happen, don't you? All right, we'll try that again. Conditional use, 405 North Andover Road. Agenda item 5.4, which is a public hearing on case number BZA-CU-2021-01. We would like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant, and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions be placed upon the premises and/or the applicant benefited by the conditional use as may be necessary to comply with the standards set forth in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations. Such conditions could reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of a conditional use upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a conditional use shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded for inclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest. Hearing none, we'll proceed on. Official notice for this hearing was published in the Butler County Times Gazette on March 27, 2021, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 20 real property owners of record in the area of notification on March 22, 2021. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte, verbal, or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
None.
I will now call on the city's zoning administrator to provide us with a report on the case.
Mr. Chairman, as I explained in the memo, this liquor store is a long-term tenant of the shopping center and has gone through some expansion over the past few months, as well as many businesses had to make some changes to their business model. This drive-through window has become a frequent change to many businesses, including the liquor business. So your applicant here tonight is just trying to adapt to a new way of doing business. We've met with the site plan review committee on this layout for the proposed window, working on a few minor traffic details, but I think in general, staff and the site plan review committee are supportive of the change.
Any questions for Les or staff before we go to the applicant?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Les, did the site planning committee discuss any bollard post near the two ends of the building? You know, there's projections on the end of that building at both ends, and you're expecting cars to come around there. Yep, right there. Are there going to be any safety posts, or I looked it up, bollard posts?
Yes, there were some bollards shown on that site plan. I'll let the applicant respond to that. There was some concern about that, whether a errant car would hit the building or the bollard. Either way would cause damage to the car.
Okay, thank you.
Well, let's.
Gary, hopefully they delay their drinking until they get home. They'll be more avoidable that way.
Let's go ahead and call on the applicant and let them make their presentation, and we can follow up with that question. So is the applicant with us?
I'm going to speak. My name is Matt Cartwright, representative to the applicant, Mr. Robert Kaplan, who's also here with me. I have to apologize on our end. We have some technology issues. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's pretty good right now. Absolutely. Keep going.
Okay. To address the items brought up by the Site Plan Review Committee, they had requested administrative modifications. There are 3 of them. One addresses that traffic issue that Les alluded to. They had requested that the drive be striped and show a connectivity to the south to 3rd Street. We did resubmit somewhat last minute to Justin a revised layout that shows the stacking area of 3 cars, again, that parallel the edge of asphalt, and that right there at that large tree, they're going to come in from 3rd Street. The primary goal, I believe, of the site plan committee was to really avoid any condition where we might back up traffic onto Andover Road. And once again, we're going to add striping to make that clear to those clientele that wish to use the drive-through. The second item was about a dumpster. It can be viewed underneath the 3rd vehicle in the current queuing.
Yeah.
That large recycled dumpster obviously is going to be a bit of an impediment for traffic now with the drive-through. And aesthetically, we were encouraged to move that to the west and make any necessary modifications to existing screen enclosures to get that inside of those enclosures and have that screen. The tenant and the landlord will work on those modifications. And the third minor was a concern about the corner, at the northeast corner of the liquor store. There was a concern about vehicular conflict of people exiting the drive-through and individuals that are driving to the east and having potentially a blind corner. So we have included in the new layout that Justin has, there's a large rectangular no parking zone with, of course, that northeast corner being radiused for traffic flow, but it's approximately 10 by 20 in size. And we've addressed those issues. To go back on the general aesthetic of this awning and cover, it's approximately 4 foot deep. It will be a quarter round configuration similar to the metal. There is a signage band below the metal awning or roof line that's approximately 5 foot tall. And our awning will fit across that signage band. We have met the limitations of signage on the surface area of the awning. We have met the minimum height of mounting requirements. And the color is going to be to match the new darker tan. You can see the old red in this image and the side image. That's of course gone now. And Mr. Kaplan has repainted the entire shopping center 2 tones of tan. We've met staff requests for new parking quantity. We have, even though we are eliminating 6 angled stalls along that east side, we have far in excess of the zoning required parking and of course the empirical parking. And of course, with a drive-through, we hope to reduce the number of individuals actually having to park. I don't think it's been spoken to, but obviously this is a positive development in terms of COVID precaution, as well as a longer term for ADA access. I think that completes my comments, unless Justin or Les, you suggest I cover any additional ground.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that Matt and Mr. Kaplan as well. Does anybody have questions for them?
Again, I'd bring up the question of bollard posts there to protect the two ends of the building.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Israel. The sidewalk that's currently, well, first of all, I want to point out that the sign image is a little bit misleading based upon the direction of this image. Those current pilasters, which used to be very large wing walls, have been reduced. Many years ago, Mr. Treacle and Mr. Kaplan did an infill between those wing walls, leaving only approximately 1'2" of them exposed as pilasters. And those are fully engaged currently in a 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk that is elevated 4 inches above the driving surface. When we plan to bring these lines in, we're going to, of course, guide them, which will be two foot away from the edge of structure. And then we'll angle cut. And I apologize that this image is relatively small, but we'll have an angle cut that allows them to approach the building closer, at which point we have 2 bollards on the face of the primary plane of the building with a continuous rail along that area to protect the building and the storefront. So the 2 bollards, that allows them to align. The placement of those will be set for a truck mirror, trailer truck type mirror extension, again, to keep anybody from accidentally contacting, similar to a bank where you might have a curb and bollards to hold them off the building face.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
This is Eric. I have a question, and I know you addressed it. I guess I forgot. So you look at the third car, and I can picture this incredibly well, and have been inside, and it looks fantastic with the wall knocked out and the expansion that's happened there. Do you envision the lining or the striping, whatever the word, if you get a 4th or a 5th car going down the south side of the shopping center rather than out into 3rd Street? Is that what you were saying?
Well, initially we had we decided to get the 4 queuing that was recommended to approach it along the south side, but from the west. But I think it was realistically, most people are going to come at this. And once they get into the routine and recognize the convenience of circling around to 3rd Street and coming in, there'll be less conflict on those 2 entry exits that lead directly out to Andover Road. So those 2, the stripes that now extend to the southwest to 3rd Street is the anticipated goal. When our tenant, Brian Schwan, spoke with other owners, liquor store owners who have converted and brought in drive-through, it was a general consensus that seldom ever more than 2, maybe 3 was the maximum in queuing.
Okay.
So I think, even though we're falling slightly short of the space for 4, that's based upon the zoning required space for a vehicle, which I think is 25 foot long. You can see the boxes surrounding these cars.
Okay.
And I think a pinch, we probably could get 4 in there. We're just trying to adhere to those guidelines for queuing space.
Thank you. So staff, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this case?
No, sir.
Thank you. Have any written communications been received?
No, they have not.
Okay. Matt, Mr. Kaplan, any final comments, or did we cover it okay?
No, again, I'm sorry for technological issues on my end, but I appreciate all your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. So hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation. If Anyone wants to raise their hand to read the 6 criteria? I'd love you for it.
I'll do that, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Gary.
Specific findings of facts, specific conditions to be met. Number 1, the proposed conditional use complies with all applicable zoning regulations, including lot size requirements, bulk regulations, use limitations, and performance standards, or a concurrent application for variance is in process. Staff has commented the proposed drive-through complies with the applicable bulk regulations, and a site plan is approved pending approval of the conditional use.
Concur.
Number 2, the proposed conditional use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood. Staff has mentioned that the proposed drive-through facility is well separated from nearby residences, businesses, and public streets.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 3, the proposed conditional use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood, preventing development and use of neighboring property in accordance with applicable zoning district regulations. Staff has mentioned the proposed location is approximately 400 feet off of Central Avenue in an area with modestly high traffic counts. The traffic generated by the proposed drive-through facility should not have a substantial effect on traffic or the outward appearance of the building so as to dominate the immediate neighborhood.
Concur.
Number 4, off-street parking and loading areas for the proposed conditional use will be provided in accordance with the standards set forth in Article 6 of the zoning regulations. Staff's comments: the proposed location revises the number of parking spaces available and the general circulation of the east end of the existing parking layout. However, adequate spaces remain, and the revised circulation plan will have little effect on the remainder of the tenants' parking.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 5, adequate utility drainage and other such necessary facilities have been installed or will be provided by plating, dedications, or guarantees. Staff's comments: there's nothing applicable to this item.
Concur.
Concur.
Number 6, adequate access roads, entrance and exit drives, or access control designed to prevent traffic hazards and to minimize traffic congestion in public streets and roads is available or will be provided by plating, dedications, or guarantees. Staff's comments: the proposed location does not interfere with the existing exit drives. However, the traffic circulation pattern is being revised to minimize traffic circulation conflicts and the potential for conflicts with Andover Road traffic.
Concur.
Concur. Gary, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there a motion for someone to either approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion?
This is Vance Garwood. I'll make a motion, having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of fact have been found that support all 6 conditions set out in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations and KSA 12-759E. I move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting the conditional use for BZA CU 2021-01.
Thank you, Vance. Do we have a second?
I, Kirsten Barnes, second.
Thank you, Kirsten. Motion by Vance, second by Kirsten. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Matt, Mr. Kaplan, we appreciate it. Continue. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's wrap this up with 5.5, which is a conditional use permit or conditional use 2035 North Andover Road. It is a public hearing on case number BZA CU-2021-02. We'd like to welcome everyone interested in this hearing and lay out a few ground rules. It is important that you present any facts or views that you have as evidence at this hearing so that findings can be made for the decision of this board. In order to grant a variance, 5 specific written findings of fact must all be met according to the state statutes and the city zoning regulations. This board is authorized by state statutes to make a decision appealable only to district court and not to the governing body. After our zoning administrator provides us with some information, I will call upon the applicant, and then we will hear from other interested parties. Once all have been heard, the applicant will have an opportunity for final comments. The board will close the hearing to further public comments and will then consider their decision, during which time they may direct questions to the applicant, the public, or staff. You should be aware that the board can require such conditions be placed upon the premises and or the applicant benefited by the conditional use as may be necessary to comply with the standards set forth in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations. Such conditions could reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of a conditional use upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these regulations. Failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to a zoning permit for a conditional use shall constitute a violation of the regulations. You should also be fully aware that if the applicant chooses to describe various features of their development plans, the city can only enforce those provisions which are covered in zoning and other city codes. Anyone wishing to speak must be recognized by the chairperson and give their name and address. Please use the podium and speak clearly so that your comments can be recorded in conclusion into our minutes. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the commission members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or a relative own property in the area of notification or have conflicts of interest.
No.
No.
Thank you. Notification. Official notice for this hearing was published in the Butler County Times-Gazette on March 27, 2021, and notices were mailed to the applicant and 7 real property owners of record in the area of notification on March 22nd, 2021. The record shows that at least 20 days have elapsed between the publication and mailing dates and the hearing date. Unless there is evidence to the contrary from anyone present, I will declare that proper notification has been given. Although we do not encourage such communications, I will ask the board if any of them have received any ex parte, verbal or written communications prior to this hearing, which they would like to share.
No.
Hearing none, I now call on the city zoning administrator to provide us with a report on this case.
Mr. Chairman, this case is very similar to the last. It's just a change in the business model of this convenience store to allow this drive-through window to serve customers rather than at the counter inside the store. Again, it's an existing location that has adequate parking. However, in this case, we haven't been to the site plan review committee yet to review the proposed changes, but we think that's something that can be worked out with the construction plans.
Any questions for Les before we proceed? All right, thanks. So let's see, let me get back on track here. So I'll call upon the applicant to make his or her presentation on the request and any response to Les's report. Is the applicant with us tonight?
Yeah, Brett Deezer with Icon Structures.
Hi, Brett. I appreciate it very much. Please, the floor is yours.
So essentially, the owner of Jumpstart has reached out to us. I mean, the same thing as the liquor store. They're trying to put a window in there on the south side. It's just a drive-through window. There will be a bollard in front of the window. I mean, pretty simple deal. There will be a handrail at the end of the sidewalk of the entry also. That's about it.
So this is Eric. I can picture it. So whether I'm coming in off of Andover Road or come in off of 21st, is the plan for me to loop behind, for lack of a better word, and be going west to east through the drive-through?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So ideally, customers would pull in back here, come through, drive-through window would be in this vicinity.
On the south end, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
So I have a question along that same line. So if I'm coming in from Andover Road on the south side of the building, do I have to go completely around the building, or is there room for me to make kind of a U-turn south of the building to queue in for the drive-through window?
I would say there's room, but to do that, ideally, customers are coming in through the south. You know, there's ample room this way. There's still plenty of room over here also, but I think ideally if customers come in through the back would be best.
So if they're doing that, then you're going to have some way of directing that traffic. Are you going to do it through signage or through striping, or how might you indicate to the public that that's the direction they need to be going?
Signage and striping, either or. We've talked about both, actually.
Okay, thank you.
What, I can't believe I can't picture this, Brett, but what's on the west edge, that red line? Is there a fence or does it just open into that field?
I'm pretty sure it opens into that field. Actually, yes, it is open. I'm looking at one of the pictures I have right now, and it opens into that field.
So I could come in off of there's one entrance off of Andover Road and there's two entrances off of 21st. And no matter where I come in, I'm going to try and end up at the southwest corner of the building coming east for the drive-through.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is Vance Garwood. The south pump is a diesel pump. And so I have, whether it be a tractor or a piece of equipment, that south pump there being a diesel pump, I've driven around the back many times. It's a little easier to navigate than part of Casey's across the road. And so to your question, Eric, there is a substantial amount of room between the back side of the building and then the property to the west that's paved. It seems to me, Brett, it would be pretty tight to try to make a turn coming off of Andover Road and then try to make a U-turn back in there. So it seems like a person would have to, come in, take a left when you're going north on Andover Road, and then take an immediate right to the north around the gas pumps, and then to the north and then back around the back. But to me, there's quite a bit of space there. Especially on the backside to make that work. To me, there's probably enough room for 3 cars to be able to safely, navigate on the west side of the building. And every once in a while, you'll even see semis parked back there. I crossed it. I navigate that corner or turn west at 21st Street every day more than once. And I see, large trucks being parked there. So there is a lot of room back there for what it's worth.
I agree. Thank you.
So do we have any other questions for Brett or staff? All right, well, hearing none. Staff, are there any members of the public that are with us tonight to speak about this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Have any of you received any written communications at staff about this?
We have not.
Thanks, Brett. Did we cover everything or anything else you'd like to add?
I think we're good. So thank you guys.
No, thank you. So hearing no further public comments, I hereby close the public portion of the hearing. There will be no further public comments unless the board wishes to ask questions to clarify information. The board will now deliberate the request to determine whether the evidence presented supports the conclusions of the required findings of fact. The board will now consider the criteria provided for evaluation. We have the same 6 as we had last time. If somebody'd like to.
I can do it this time.
Thanks.
Specific conditions to be met. The proposed conditional use complies with all applicable zoning regulations, including lot size requirements, bulk regulations, use limitations, and performance standards, or a concurrent application for variance is in process. Staff, the proposed drive-through would require analysis of the required parking spaces for the convenience store.
Concur.
Concur.
2, the proposed conditional use will not cause substantial injury to the value of the property in the neighborhood. Staff, the proposed drive-through facility is well separated from nearby residences, businesses, and public streets.
Concur.
Concur.
The proposed conditional use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood, preventing development and use of neighboring property in accordance with applicable zoning district regulations. Staff, the proposed location is approximately 250 feet off of West 21st Street and the Andover Road in an area with modestly high traffic counts. The traffic generated by the proposed drive-through facility should not have a substantial effect on traffic or the outward appearance of the building so as to dominate the immediate neighborhood.
Concur.
4, off-street parking and loading areas for the proposed conditional use will be provided in accordance with the standards set forth in Article 6 of the zoning regulations. Staff, the proposed location revises the number of parking spaces available in a general circulation to the south end of the existing parking layout. A revised parking and circulation plan will have to be approved by the site plan review committee.
Sure.
5, adequate utility, drainage, and other necessary facilities have been installed or will be provided by plating, dedications, or guarantees. Staff, not applicable.
Concur.
6, adequate access roads, entrance and exit drives, or access control designed to prevent traffic hazards and to minimize traffic congestions in public streets and roads is available or will be provided by plating, dedications, or guarantees. Staff, the proposed location does not interfere with existing exit drives. However, this traffic circulation pattern would have to be revised to minimize traffic circulation conflicts and the potential for conflicts with 21st Street and Andover Road traffic.
Concur.
Vance, thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll entertain a motion to approve, modify and approve, disapprove, or to table the discussion.
Mr. Chairperson, I have a question.
Sure.
Since this hasn't gone to the site plan review committee, and there seem to be some issues with how traffic's going to flow and parking there at the convenience store, I don't know that I feel comfortable granting this conditional use until those things have been addressed. I don't know if I'm the only person who feels that way.
Yeah, I don't know which side of the fence I fall on, Gary, but I feel much less secure with this one than the one we just heard. The previous one felt like it had been thought out slightly more.
Yeah,
I think
I think if we had something from the site plan committee, showing what things are proposed, it'd be easier for us to give to authorize a resolution granting this conditional use. So Mr. Chairperson, I'm going to make a motion that we table this item until the applicant has been through the site plan review committee and can come back to us with some preliminary or with some images or designs on how things will be addressed in regards to the traffic.
Gary, I can say an alternative option is to approve this evening, but to condition your approval on the site plan review committee regarding a circulation plan. So that is an alternative option. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, I appreciate that, because when I'm looking at the recommended action, that isn't one of the things that's in there in the notes. So based on that, Mr. Chairperson, I would revise my motion and make a motion that we, or having considered the evidence at the hearing and determined that the findings of facts have been found that support all 6 conditions set out in subsection 11-107C of the zoning regulations in KSA 12-759E, I move that the chairperson be authorized to sign a resolution granting, with the condition that things go through the site plan review committee for the conditional use for BZA-CU-2021-02.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that modified motion. Do we have a second?
Second by Vance Garwood.
Thank you, Vance. Motion by Gary, second by Vance. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Brett, thanks for being with us this evening. We appreciate your input.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I will have a motion. Let me take a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission. Do I have that motion?
Mr. Chairperson, I'd make the motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Gary. Do I have a second?
Second by Kirsten Barnes.
Thanks, Kirsten. We have a motion by Gary, second by Kirsten. And do we have, forgive me. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. So, any member items? Anybody have anything else for the good of the cause?
Not this evening.
Thank you. And just for the record, Justin, we would have made 7:45, but staff comments on the conditional uses were very, very windy, man. Very windy.
I know. Sorry.
I'm just kidding. I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
I'll make that motion to adjourn. Marla Canfield.
Thank you, Marla. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion. Gary Israel.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? We are out. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Aye.
Out, there was a layer that it couldn't go any further, and then it looks like I lied because there's some little puckers on top of the storm. Those little, what are called